to have tests. Should we have this test in the beginning of the lecture, or should we have this test in the actually in the end of the lecture?
Hello, can we please do the test in the beginning? I have the next lecture in my Italian university afterwards.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Just a moment. Okay, давайте just do it like that one. Let's wait a bit for others, and then I create form for you in Google. Again, the answer. Anton, this летучка was like announced in advance. I think I said about it in the first lecture. I said about it, I think during the seminars, and I basically wrote you a letter. Okay, let's do it quickly then. Deciding about. Да, Екатерина.
I'm sorry. Can I ask you to accept my friend Gleb Skvortsov? He's trying to apply for the team.
Okay.
Thank you.
So our летучка wouldn't be in LMS, but just in Google form.
No, in LMS. I just want to know in the beginning or in the end.
Excuse me, can you please also accept Miranovskaya Anastasia? She tries to enter. Thank you.
And Dasokin Alexander.
Okay. Okay, here the form for Google Docs. Let's vote for beginning or for the end. Or maybe in the middle. For instance, for yeah, Ekaterina, you said you have the lectures. Okay, when you need to leave. Could you write any? What, sorry?
I can write it, okay.
Ten, 15, you mean what? Now we have like 15 minutes past 11.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's wrong time. It's 12.
12, 15, like
Yes,
in the
yes.
So like in the end, it means like in 12. Yeah, so please vote, and then we decided should be in 12. Yeah, or should be it like now. Okay. Yeah, like 92% of people decided said we should now. Okay, let's do it now. Like wait 2 minutes more for people. Like who want to be in group? Did they get their basically invitation? I accept everybody in the group. Like no other colleagues who want to be in group. Okay, then test going to be in LMS. You need to go to basically our group labor economics, and then now I'm going to open for you test. Just wait like 2 minutes. Small, hint for you. Please open the slides with the reservation wage. Basically, how you can calculate the reservation wage. Small hint, and with the unemployment formula. And a small hint for those who just basically in time. And then in 1 minute, I'm going to open the test. So if someone overslept, like she or he has 1 minute to join us, basically. Okay, then like just wait. Yeah, any other? Yeah, you have 13 minutes for the test. And I open it now, basically. Yeah, then you have 13 minutes, and then when everybody done, I'm going to close it.
А можете еще раз по-русски повторить, сколько времени на тест нам дается?
13 минут вам дается на тест, там будет время. Там 11 вопросов, они не то чтобы это. Да?
А он уже появился в LMS?
Нет, он еще не появился. Сейчас я его публикую. Вот сейчас вы должны видеть тест. Now you should see the test. It's called test 1. Yeah, and basically it will be really useful for you if you have open lecture with you, basically, because with lecture you can answer on all questions of the test. If you cannot see test, please write me in chat.
And should we start?
Yeah, of course. Okay, test is open now. You can start now. Have 13 minutes.
Тест, он типа находится в файлах или в
тестах? Вы должны... Так, okay. You need to go to our group, Labor Economics code, yeah? And then you see the test.
Yeah, thank you, I find it.
Yeah, it means on. The question is like only on consumption of goods, only on goods.
Евгения Юрьевна, можно еще раз вопрос по поводу 10-го?
Мгм.
Вопрос стоит как only.
Да. То есть, смотрите, утверждение, что максимизирует полезность, потребляя товары, так или нет? То есть только товары или не только товары? То есть там правильное утверждение или нет?
Все понятно, спасибо.
Окей, все поняли про 10-й? Имеется в виду, что утверждение, что они потребляют только товары, как было написано. Да, давайте проверим сейчас. Сейчас я проверю. Антон, я сейчас...
там результат теста прям в самом верху, да, где балл теста написано. А вас не слышно.
Антон, слайд 17 в лекции, которая у нас была.
Хорошо, спасибо.
А можете, пожалуйста, подсказать, а если я не нажала завершить работу, то тест не сохраняется автоматически? И вас опять не слышно.
Сейчас, давайте я посмотрю. Кто меня спрашивал? Я просто не видела фамилию. Ага, да, сейчас я увижу. Нет, ваш тест у меня есть. Все нормально.
Хорошо, спасибо большое.
Посмотрите, пожалуйста, еще 10-й вопрос. Непонятно, почему там неправильно.
Смотрите, там как бы фраза, что только товары.
Понятно.
То есть они потребляют товары и отдых. Там фраза максимизирует как бы потреблением товаров. Нет, это не видно, потому что они потребляют и товары, и отдых.
А балл округляется за летучки?
Нет.
Нет? Ну ладно.
Okay,
как оценивается летучка? Простите, что перебиваю.
Yeah, like, okay, you have 5 tests. Yeah, I speak in English because we have people who do not speak Russian here. Okay, you have 5 tests. Each, all tests weighted like 25%. Now you can calculate how weighted each test. What is the weight for each test then? Like 5 tests is like 25%, each test like 5%, yes? For instance, for the test, you have 72 points. It means that you get 72 points in LMS. It's like, if it's in 10 scales, like 7.2, yeah? And it means it's a weight for 5%. And then it calculated according to their weights, and then you get the final grade, and this final grade is rounded. Is it clear?
Yeah, thank you.
Excuse me, I have a question about the third question.
Third question. I just need to open the test. Just a moment. Yeah, okay.
So unemployment level, maybe it was meant to be unemployment rate because
it's the same unemployment rate and unemployment level.
Because
it's synonymous basically. Yeah, you're right. It's like unemployment level is the same as unemployment rate.
But employment level is not the same as the employment rate, or not?
Could you, like, unemployment level is not the same as employment rate, you mean?
No. Employment level and employment rate.
It's the same too.
It's okay. Like... So it's just the question, are we dividing by a labor force or by the whole working?
Well, yes, that's all. It's, I mean, it's simple questions.
Okay.
It's like nothing special hidden here. I mean, so like, as I told you, like using lecture, you can answer on all questions on the tests. It's like no specific hard questions in this small tests. Basically, I told you during the lecture. You may not believe me, but I mean, it's true. Yeah, like you have 2 lectures and all questions based on the lectures.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I hope those who want to. Okay. Do we have people who still on the test? Should we wait a bit for other people? Okay, I think like all should everyone done. Okay, so just small for you. I'm going to close test in 5 minutes. So basically we start in 20, test is like 30 minutes. 13 minutes even if somebody was late, then like 5 minutes and then I'm going to close the test. Okay, those of you who are in the lecture, do you have people who still do some tests? Who still are in the test?
Да,
Okay.
есть такие люди, у меня подружка делает сейчас.
Вот, скажите подружке, что через 5 минут тест закроется. Она во сколько начала?
Она вот сейчас начала, как раз открыла его.
Окей, давайте я жду до 12, и тогда закрываю тест.
Угу.
Даже не до 12, но окей, подружка сейчас начала, это значит, окей, 15 minutes, and then the test closed. So test will be closed like 5 minutes before 12. So if you have friends who just overslept, please tell them that like basically 15 minutes and then it's going to be closed. Then I'm not going to open the test again. So I told you 2 times that test will be in the lecture, and then I wrote you a letter that test will be in the lecture. So who wants to be in the test, basically
Could you please answer one small question about our Lituchka?
Yeah.
The last question.
Okay.
I don't really understand why our C divided by L, it's our MRS. So why C is 6,030?
Yeah, okay, I guess. Look, what is basically reservation wage? It's a wage. If we go, I just tell you the number of slides. Maybe it will be just. I need to find the slide for you. Just a moment. Yeah, look, this is slide 18 in our lecture, in the first lecture. Look, basically the reservation wage is the marginal rate of substitution when not working at all. And basically, when you're not working at all, you can basically what it means. It's like your reservation wage, it's marginal rate of substitution. What is marginal rate of substitution? Yeah, it means that you can like what happened with the consumption of people when these people do not work at all. Okay, if we have 630 rubles.
I see. Then we have wage equals 0, and our budget is only that your mom gives to you. Just I see.
Yeah, and so like the Anna can spend this 6,300 rubles for consumptions.
I see.
Yeah, and then the utility function is simple. What it's like how much she can consume divided by how much she can leisure. Yeah, like maximum leisure is like 84 hours. What's mean? It means like for marginal like reservation wage is like how many Anna can leisure in case no walking. It's like 84 hours. Yes, and then for consumption we have this money that mom basically sent to Anna. So like consumption divided by maximum hours of leisure, it's what it's like. Yeah, you see basically.
Thank you.
Okay.
Excuse me. One more time.
Sarah, you have the same questions? What?
No, I have my stupid question about employment level and employment rate. So employment level, it's the proportion of employed and
Yeah.
all people in working age.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, and rate, it is the proportion of employed to labor force, right?
No, I mean the level, employment level and the employment rates is the same. You divide it by working age population. That's all.
Nope. There
Maybe it's my fault, like for you to not be. But I mean, level. You have it in your. Okay, the first lecture basically. No, level. It means that you can calculate the share of people. Yeah. Divided by working age population. Rate is calculated in the same way. And unemployment level, unemployment rates calculated in the same way too.
I think the question is about that unemployment rate calculated like unemployed divided by labor force, but employment rate calculated is employed divided by working age.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
unemployment rate plus employment rate are not equal 100%.
No, you're right. Yeah.
And why like this?
Why like this? Because we have International Labor Organization and basically methodology based on the International Labor Organization. But I mean, why is this in sensible way? Basically because we suppose that all people who are in working age can be in employment if they want. Yeah. And if we care about employment level, it means that we care about how much people that can work like basically they are in working age population, they work. Like how many people from the working age population basically are in the labor market. And like for the labor market, we need to estimate how many people basically we have and how many people do we have in the labor market. When we speak about unemployment, we care only about employed people, basically. We care about labor forces, we care about only for those who are already in the labor market. And because of that, unemployment level, it's not like from the working age population, because part of working age population can basically be in the labor market, but don't want to be. Yeah, it's like for different reasoning for this. Yeah, and unemployment level is basically about how many people who are already in the labor market cannot find a job, but they want to find this job. You see the different.
Yeah, okay, I got it. Thank you.
Different logics.
Thank
so
you.
like basically, yeah, is more understandable now.
Yes, now it has its own logic. Okay.
Yeah, basically because when we speak, okay, when you basically read in the articles and the news about employment level, it's always about how many basically potential, so-called potential labor force can we have. For instance, if you read about this labor force, about this employment level in the news, they always says, okay, we have this this number of working age population, but only approximately 68 of them are in the labor market. Can we create the situation when more people, from the working age population agree to be in the labor market? And maybe you read some articles in news that now we have a shortage of the labor force in construction and in the services because of a shortage of labor migrants, and other potential basically labor force are not agreed to be in the labor market because of the low wages. Yeah, so it's not a story about how many people cannot find a job. It's a story about what we should do in order to create some really nice, basically, like to create a push factors, for people to be in the labor market. Yeah, and I'm going to record it. Okay, let's start with the lecture. Basically, we finished with the labor supply. Yeah, and now we continue with the basically labor demand. Okay, could you see my slides, my PDF
Yes,
file?
we can.
Just shift to the labor demand. Basically, labor demand, those of you who are from economics, yeah, it's kind of repetition for you maybe. Why? Because it's basically labor demand based on classical production functions that you already know. Okay, what is the most classical version of production function? What is the name of this? You know it's from microeconomics, like
Cobb-Douglas.
Yeah, it's Cobb-Douglas basically, and you see it's like really similar. Yeah, so like production function basically what describe that firm can produce using what? Using labor basically, in our case, number of employee, yeah, and using capital. So many, as we discussed, yeah, this model is clearly theoretical, yeah, and the main assumption that basically the number of employee hours is given by the product of the number of working hours times. Yeah, it means that basically the firm can get the same output when it hired 10 workers for 8 hours a day, or when it hired 20 workers for 4 hours a day. It means that in this simple model, we do not say that we have different skills for different workers. We just say we have like number of workers. It's like really simplification of the real world. Yeah, just for theoretical consideration. So the production functions assumes for different types of workers basically can be somehow aggregated into a single output, and we call it labor. But we know that in reality we have high-skilled labor, low-skilled labor. It's all like simplification of the reality. For this, of course, like with the labor supply, we have what? We have marginal product of labor, yeah, and the marginal product of capital. And basically, it's approximately the same ideas, yeah, when we talked about marginal problem of consumption, yeah, and marginal product of leisure. Yeah, it's basically change on output resulting from hiring additional worker or resulting from 1 unit increase in the capital stock.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Why do we put E for labor, not L?
Employment, because it means employment.
Okay.
We care about how many people we employed.
Okay.
But I mean, like all employment's called labor, but like we care about how many people we can employ. That's all. I mean, yeah, if you think about that way, like if we employ 20 people, it's like all 20 people basically can be labor. But because of labor market, we care about how many people we can employ. Because of this, instead of L, labor, we have employment. And because of we have L for leisure in supply function in order to distinguish these functions, that's all. Okay, we have classical, basically law of diminishing return to scale. Yeah, and we have average product of labor, and basically you remember from my microeconomics course, is the same idea for average product of when you study the labor and capital basically in classical form. In this case, it's the same, yeah, average product of labor. Basically, the amount of outputs produced by typical workers. You see, it's like just what we can produce divided by the number of employed people. So, yeah.
May I ask one question regarding the capital stock? Am I right that this is like our product which we produce, right?
No, capital stock is other input in our function. So products that we produce is like firm's output, basically Q. Yeah, and key it's a capital stock. It means like input. I think, okay, maybe it's more understandable when you think about the capital in terms of, for instance, number of machines, number of computers,
Okay.
of investments, and something like that.
Okay, thank you.
So, I mean, think about that. It's really simple. You cannot produce nothing without, for instance, I mean, if we speak about modern companies, computers, you need some computers for people. Okay, you can hire people, but you need to provide, I don't know, some computers for them. Or we think about factory, you need to provide for people some machines, basically. So machines cannot be work without people nowadays, yeah, and people cannot be work without machines. So we need both inputs in order to produce some goods, basically. Okay, so again, average product of labor just divided by outputs of firm divided by number of workers. Okay, and just a moment, I need to close the test and then we continue. Okay. Yeah, so for firm, we have so-called total productive curve. And basically the relationship between output and the number of workers hired by the firm. Yeah, so like marginal productive curve, and basically shows you the output produced by each additional worker. An average productive curve gives you the output per like typical worker. The logic is really simple, yeah? You hire basically the workers till what points? Like really simple based on these pictures. For profit maximizing firm is good in case of capital is constant, is good to hire worker till the what points according to these pictures?
Till the decline.
Yeah, basically till the
intersection.
Yeah, till the intersection, till the decline, basically. Yeah, it's like more profitable to hire from till these points, and then it's not so profitable. Why? Because you see that the average products behave higher than the marginal products. Yeah, it's simple logic, yeah? Because we have marginal return to scale. It's simple. Yeah, you know the marginal return to scale. So, profits maximization. Basically what? Firms
Excuse me. So are we talking here about average product or average cost?
Basically, we have about average product. Because like in our case, average product of labor, it's just output firms divided by number of employed people. I mean, it depends on how you measure the basically outputs of the firm. You can measure it in, for instance, in dollars, in rubles, or you can measure in the number of production. If you measure its number of production, it's about like number of goods. If you measure it in money, yeah, in finance, like revenue, for instance, it's just in dollars.
Okay, and in that case, could you please repeat why do we wait for intersection? So, and after that, it's unprofitable for us to hire one more worker because.
Yeah, I get it. Basically, the idea is simple. Yeah, it's that it's more. I mean, it's more profitable. Yeah, hire workers when your marginal product of labor is higher than the average product of labor. It just means that you have diminishing return to scale. And after these intersections, the average product of labor became higher than the marginal product of labor. It means that each, what does it mean dimension return to scale? That each additional workers give you what? Less or higher output, basically, for you.
Less, but what does it mean that it gives less than an average product? So we are getting less from him or her, right?
Yeah, it's that's all. I mean,
Okay.
of course, it's like a really simplification of the picture, because deciding about to hire or not to hire depends also about supply, about the price of this labor, yeah, and about production function. But that's just simple picture just shows you that after this point, the marginal product of labor became what, lower compared to the average product. That's all.
Okay.
Okay, then profit maximization, what we have? We have basically the price for your goods that firms produce. That we have wage rate, it's the price for labor basically, and we have the price of the capital. Yeah, in really simplified world, in perfectly competitive market, we suppose, yeah, that the price of the output basically is then affected by how much output this specific firm produce or sells. Yeah, and the price of the labor capital basically is then affected by how much labor and capital that firms hires. Yeah, you understand that is really far away from the at least Russian labor market. Okay, for the Russian economy, do we have competitive market? Like not perfectly competitive, but do we have still competitive market for Russian economies? What are the specific features of the Russian economies, basically? Let's speak about the reality. Okay, what types
Maybe
of...
it's something like monopoly competitive market.
Yeah, Nikolai, you're right, and like monopoly and plus oligopoly. Yeah, we have...
Я имел в виду монополистическую конкуренцию.
Yeah, you're right, yeah. So, yeah, Nikolai basically is right. We have what? We have like huge monopolistic firms, for instance, RZD, but it's like monopolistic in all countries. And also we have so-called monopolistic competitors, or like oligopoly. Yeah, we have oligopoles. It means, for instance, it's hard to think about oil and gas sector. Do you really believe that we have competitors form in this sector? What situation we have in oil and gas sector?
They are always used as an example of oligopoly.
Yeah, look, and think about basically other sectors. Maybe if we speak about services, maybe it's somehow we have like competitive markets. But if we think about production sector, so-called, it's like usually a situation of oligopoly. And because of this, it's oligopoly and monopolistic companies influence somehow basically on the labor market. How can they influence on the labor market in the reality? How, for instance, they can influence on the wage rate, for instance, in the labor market? In the reality, what do you think can happen? If we have a oligopoly, how this firm can influence on the wage rate in this specific sector?
But if a firm is in a oligopoly market, we need to understand that it is not always the case that it is an oligopoly firm in the labor market. So there are two markets of goods and labor. So
yeah, you're right. Yeah, definitely you're right. But suppose, for instance, if you're right, it can be. But it can also be that in a oligopoly labor market, I mean, in the oligopoly sector, normal market, we can have so-called oligopoly labor market too, when, for instance, some number of companies basically can establish some. I mean, what is what happens basically? The classical example of this is when you think about pharmaceutical labor market of St. Petersburg. It's basically the problem. We have so-called Biakas. Have you heard about these companies? Biakat? Nope. Gera Pharma? No.
No, I know about Biocat is a pharmaceutical company, I think.
Yeah. So like we have Biacat and Gera Pharma, for instance, and basically Biacat somehow dictated the wage rate. Why? Because they provide a relatively high wage rate. It means that it basically absorbs high qualified people, and if other firms want to survive, they need to raise the wages too, yeah, in order to basically have opportunities to hire high qualified people too. It's kind of competition between markets, yeah, for resources. And it's only in those labor markets or only for those firms who really want to really high, like really high educated, yeah, people, because these high educated people is basically necessity for their future development. Yeah, and we think about the oligopoly market, it can be the same situation, for instance. But as Nikolai said, basically, of course, it depends on the each sectors. But in pharmaceutical, I mean, in reality, now we have this situation. Okay, let's go further. Yeah, so for firm, basically, we may discuss so-called short-run demand for labor and long-run demand for labor. Yeah, basically, in the short run, the firm can only decide whether to alter its output level. So basically, how to increase or decrease output is not an issue, because only the employment of labor can be adjusted in the short-run demand. So a firm can hire some additional worker, yeah, and can decide about the number of employed people. So then we have so-called marginal product of labor. So the value of marginal product of labor, it's like, in this case, yeah, it's a dollar increase in the revenue generated by an additional worker. So as I called, yeah, it basically, if we say that we speak about just number of goods, yeah, it can be goods. But now we speak about revenue, yeah, and it can be in the dollars too. Yeah, it depends how the problem is formulated. But in this case, we suppose that we have prices for goods, yeah, and so we called about revenue of the firm in terms of dollars, rubles, in terms of any money. So in this case, the value of average product of labor when we have prices. Basically, the value of average products gives the dollar value output of per worker. It's the same that we discuss about the output, but now we have prices for our goods, and now we talk about the revenue of the firms. I think I hope it's not so difficult. Yeah, and it's the same idea, look. First, now we see the pictures, yeah, this is the intersection, but we can have different situation. And it's, as I told you, it depends on the wage rate in the labor market. Suppose, for instance, in our case, the wage rate in the labor market is $22 per hour, for instance. Basically, firm can have different decision about how many workers firm can hire. For instance, we see that firm can hire, yeah, like in this case, maximum number of workers, like 8 workers, yeah, according to their production function. But I mean, it just okay, for you to understand, maybe it's like too complicated. Basically, this picture just shows you what happened with the demand when the wage rate increase. Yeah, it just shows you how many workers firm can hire in case of wage raise on 22, at what happened with the demand of the firms for workers if we suppose that the wage rate increased till 38. It's just an illustration that the increasing of wage rate theoretically should decrease the demand in short run, should decrease the demand of firms for labor. That's all. Yeah, I think it's quite understandable. And basically, in reality, we may, I mean, of course, it depends, yeah, on the supply and demand in the labor market. But I mean, theoretically, again, wage rate increase in short run, then the labor demand decrease. That's all. Yeah, so then we have so-called short-run demand curve for labor in the industry. For individual firms, it looks like that. And if we basically summarize the demand curves for all firms, yeah, we get this picture, DD. But in reality, like theoretically, yeah, true industry demand takes into account the impact of industry expansion on output price. Because for firms, we have not only short-term, yeah, but also long-term demand for labor. And in reality, it looks like that. Yeah, the wage rate and the number of employment that firms can get. Yeah, just there's a line. So we have elasticity of labor demand. Basically, it's the same that the same logic that we called about the elasticity, for instance, for leisure. Yeah, about in the labor supply. So basically, elasticity of labor demand is what? % change in employment divided by % change in the wage. So labor demand is no elastic if this absolute value of elasticity is less than 1. What does it mean if we say that we have an elastic labor demand? Do you understand? I mean, what basically, okay, if we have an elastic labor demand, could you think about an example of sectors or any examples when we have this, when we may have in real life inelastic labor demand?
Maybe military.
For instance, yeah? Okay. About the military, yeah, some interesting fact. Do you have any chance to see or look on any budget of regions, of budget of Russia, or like whatever? Do you interested in budget of Russia, for instance, or in budget of St. Petersburg?
I guess so.
Yes, not really. Okay, do you know that unfortunately we do not know how our government spent on the military sector? Do you know that these numbers are basically closed for us?
There is a closed percentage. So it is called like I don't know, top secret spendings, but I guess that that our military is not entirely in it.
Yeah, it's not entirely, but it means that you cannot really understand from the budget how much money government spend, for instance, for the called I don't know how to in English, like for the wage of the militaries. You know that wage of the militaries is not like based on the competition and not based on the like labor supply and demand in the labor market. Yeah, it depends on the labor experience and based on the position in the army and etc. I mean, if you I mean, why it's interesting? Because if you think about the budget for St. Petersburg and Moscow and you compare this, you may see the interesting fact that, for instance, budget for the city infrastructure in Moscow 6 times higher compared to the budget to the city infrastructure in St. Petersburg. Yeah? But why it's interesting? Because we do not know how our budget basically worked, because sometimes we have so vague sectors of this budget and you cannot really understand the source, yeah, for this budget. For instance, if you think about huge companies that pay taxes, yeah, it's sometimes, unfortunately, it's usually so-called individual decision in what basically region this company should locate it. Think about Gazprom. You know that now Gazprom is St. Petersburg. It's not like economically profitable decision. Yeah, it's kind of individual decision that Gazprom should be in St. Petersburg in order to pay taxes to the St. Petersburg city. I mean, when you think about Russian economy, as Nikolai said, you should not think about as a competitive labor market or as a competitive basically market at all. Yeah, so we do not have a real, maybe you have other opinion, yeah, but when we see what happened with the budget, when we see what happened with the taxation, when we see what happened in the labor market, it's not really, free labor market or free market that you discuss in your microeconomics course. Maybe some of you have other opinion. Any other opinion? Maybe you disagree with this statement?
Well,
I'm not. Okay.
Perfectly competitive market includes similar goods, infinite number of sellers, and so it's just not I don't know, it's not something which can be applied for real life. But
yeah, of course.
yes,
But I mean,
you're right.
simple competitive market. Sorry, just simple. Not perfectly, of course. But compare the market of, for instance, USA and Russia.
Yes, unfortunately, we are much less competitive.
No. It's not. It doesn't mean that like I try to, empowered and be some. But I mean, when you think about the budget, about taxation, think about like, and ask the questions. Yeah. What about taxations? Yeah. How this budget is formed, basically. Yeah. Why some specific firms basically located in this town or that town or that town? Yeah, what happens in the economy in the Russian market? Okay, should I believe in official statistics, for instance? Yeah, something about this one. Okay, do you believe in official statistics for labor market, for instance?
Partly.
Yeah, partly. Yeah, so like it can be. Okay, so we go for employment decision in the long run. Basically, you see that for the long run, we have really similar situation to the labor supply. Yeah, and in the labor supply, we have, our indifference curve for people. And you see it looks like isoquant. Yeah, and basically, so for people, we have indifference curve. For basically companies, we have isoquants. The logic is the same. It's a possible combination of labor and capital that produce the same level of output of the firm. And approximately the same assumption for this. First, isoquants must be downward sloping. Isoquants cannot be intersect. High isoquants are associated with higher levels of output. Yeah, either ones are convex to the origin. You see, it's really similar to the assumption for indifference curve for people. Yeah, because the logic is the same, basically. Then you have marginal rate of technical substitution. It basically is the slope of either quant, like the negative ratio of marginal product of what? Employment and the capital. So here you have cost of production. It's the same as budget constraint for people. Yeah, basically cost of production, it means how much money firm should spend in order to produce goods. So firm should spend some money on the employment, and firm should spend some basically money for so-called capital. It means for machines, for instance, for investments in the new technology, for different softwares and etc. Yeah, it's like other than employment. So, and you see that we have the slope of this either cost line. So with either quants and either cost. And you know that like with the people, yeah, we have optimal point. Yeah, and you told me you can solve this problem for the firms like you solve the problem for the maximizing utility individuals. You should use what again for new people? How we calculate this point when we have the cost constraint and we have the production firm? What method?
Lagrangian.
Yeah, you just use Lagrangian multiplier, yeah, and you can calculate. We are not going to do this. Don't worry, but for you to know, yeah, you remember from your course. So basically, you can calculate this point. So in this case, we have optimal point. So 100 for employment and 175 for capital. Yeah, so then we have so-called long-run demand for curve labor. For this case, we have our costs. Yeah, our costs. Then we have our either quants, basically. And we see what happened. Yeah, with the wage rate, we need to know with the wage rate. And then we see what happened in the difference wage rate. First, what? We have like two possible wage rate, like wage 0 and wage 1. Yeah, and depends on this, firms decided about different number of people. Again, yeah, when the wage rate is high, firm decide what? How much in our example? Yeah, so we have low wage rate, firm decided about 25 people to hire. Yeah. So high wage rate, yeah, when the wage rate is false. So, for instance, okay, stupid questions. When the simplest explanation why the wage falls in the labor market?
There are too many workers.
Yeah, too many workers. For instance, supply increases. Yeah, so wage rate falls. It means that firm can hire more people. In our case, it's 40. Okay. I mean, if you think about the real market, you need to understand that. Okay. Why we can have this situation? For instance, we have high wages. Yeah, we have high demand for workers, for instance. Yeah, we have high supply for workers, but still firms say that they cannot find workers, that cannot hire workers, even in case of high supply of workers. Why we can have this situation in the labor market? Like theoretically, high supply, yeah, like high demand, firms should hire some workers. But in real life, we have sectors with high supply, with high demand, but still firms say we have a problem with the basically employment. Why it can be in the real situation?
Not elastic labor supply, so they don't want low wages.
For instance, in what sector do you think we have the situation? In Russia, for instance, could you suppose about sectors when we may have this type of situation? Think about not really high profitable sectors.
Science.
Yeah, but it depends on the basically science. It depends on the so-called sphere. Yeah, it's education, but not the higher education, like not universities, but think about schools and teachers in schools. But basically for teachers' schools, we have low supply. We have high demand, but low supply. For instance, we have high demand and rather low supply in agriculture too. But there is one sector when we have high wages, really high wages. We have really high supply and high demand, but still we have a problem that firms say they cannot basically hire enough people. Like high wages, high demand, high supply. Why it can be? Do you have any ideas why we can have the situation in the real market with the high wages, high demand, high supply? Yeah, sorry.
Very big costs of employment. So like the whole procedure.
Yeah, for instance, and think about the qualifications. We do not speak in these simplified models, but what about qualifications of people? When we may have a problem?
So only qualified workers are wanted, but the supply is full of low qualified ones.
For instance, yeah, you're right. Basically, we have the situation in so-called IT sector, information technology. Yeah, they provide some relatively high wages. Relatively, yeah, it depends, of course. I mean, if you, okay, basically, according to the headhunter, yeah, in St. Petersburg, we basically have done this analysis for our applied project. Yeah, what do you think the average wage for IT sector in St. Petersburg, according to vacancies posted in a headhunter? Is it really different from, for instance, wages in, I don't know, in finance sector? What do you think the difference?
It should be.
Yeah, but like, can you suppose how many percentage this difference can, like IT sector and, for instance, finance sector, like economic sectors, whatever?
Percentage, it will be tricky to use it here because we need to state the 100%. So will it be the wage of IT specialist or a wage of finance specialist? But I guess in rubles, it could be maybe 10 or 15 thousands.
Yeah, basically you are really close to the reality. Yeah, according to estimation, according to vacancies, yeah, posted basically job. In IT is approximately 90,000 rubles per month, 92 approximately. Yeah, it's according to 20, like the vacancies that's posted during the 20 months. So like this year. And for finance, it's approximately like 72 or 73, something like that. So the difference is close that you say it's like 20,000 rubles. But it's, of course, it's average. So it just shows you that the IT salary is high, but not really, it's like relatively high. Yeah, it means that even in other sectors, depending on your position, your qualifications and skills, you can have approximately the same wages, yeah, depends, yeah, as in IT sector. But of course, if we speak about average wage, is a difference. But I mean, do not be so stressful that if you decided not to go to IT, you will be basically starving. No, you in other sectors, you also can have like relatively high wages. That's all. And even for finance, for economic sectors, it's not so really huge difference with IT. So just for reality. Okay. So long run demand. So it means the decline in the wage will typically cut the marginal cost of production of the firm's output. It means it's cheaper to produce an additional unit of output. And first, with what? We suppose that drop in wages should increase them, basically their employment, the decision of firm hire to more workers. It increases in employment level, yeah. And what is it? It's increasing. Basically, it means that firm can decide to hire more, but of course it depends on the reservation wage of people. It depends on the, for instance, decision of people to be or not to be on the labor market. Yeah, in reality, but theoretically, if the wage decrease, firm decided to hire more workers, and because of that, yeah, like long-term consequences of that, you see that decrease in wage basically encourage the firm to expand production. What does it mean? Decrease in wage may encourage the firm produce more. It means that increasing of output of the firm. Yeah, so again, wage drops, employment increasing, like employment decision of firm increasing, and basically outputs of the firms increase too. Okay, so this is what happened, yeah, with the firm's output decision. Yeah, you see the wage cut reduces the marginal cost of production and encourages the firm to expand, as we discussed. Yeah, first we have these pictures. Then we have the next pictures like expand of output. So what about firm's hire decision? Look, the firm will jump basically to hire is a quant because the total cost of production again decreases. Yeah, and firm can decide to hire more people. Yeah, instead of 25, we have new optimal point, like firm decide to hire more. Okay, hope it's clear. So the long-run demand curve for labor. Yeah, you see this, it's really look like the short run, but when we speak about long run, we speak not only about how many people firm can hire, but we also discuss what happened with the output of the firm. So again, yeah, what happened with when we have a different wage rate in the labor market? Yeah, again, the same picture. Yeah, and then we, for firm, we also have so-called substitution and scale effects. So look, the scale effects indicate what happens to the demand for the firm's input as the firms expand production. So it means as long as capital and labor are normal inputs, the scale effect increases both firm's employment and capital stock. Yeah, so the scale effect here. The substitution effect, yeah, have like relatively different pictures. Okay, could you, based on the picture, could you tell me what happens when we have the substitution effects? Is here, you can see it. What happens with the firm is the weight changes. Okay, what happened with the basically, okay, again, what scale effect told us? That weight changes. We have what? We have increasing in labor and increasing in capital stock. The substitution effects, what? Basically based on the name of this effect.
So we substitute some capital with some labor.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, it's really simple. I mean, labor is more cheaper for us. And we decided basically substitute labor with the firm. That's all. Oh, sorry, labor. Sorry, capital with the labor. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yes, you're right. Yeah. So basically, but what is crucial? Both the substitution and scale effect induce the firm to hire more workers as the wage falls. Yeah, falling wages always mean hire more workers, but it depends of like difference. Depends on the firm decision and depends on whether scale effect dominates or substitute effects dominates. Okay, do you have any questions about the scale and substitution effect? Do you understand the difference between it? I hope it's clear based on the pictures, not so.
Yes, but we remember that there are two different approaches how to calculate them, and it is not so easy to do that mathematically, but yes, on the graph it looks okay. Let's say so.
Okay, if I decided to include this in test, of course, I will be set in dollars, should be in dollars or like in outputs. Of course, I basically in these questions, no, I'm not going to ask you to calculate the substitution effects. I may just, it should be like theoretically, and you should understand the essence of this. If it's going to be calculations, can be about with high probability elasticity, for instance, for firms. Yeah, as you remember, the formula is kind of simple formula. Yeah, and it should be, for instance, like, I don't know, you have this number of workers and in dollars, you have this from you in dollars. So, I mean, if it's going to be in tests, it's going to be with specific explanation. Do we think about dollars or do like rubles, for instance, or do we think about the number of outputs of the goods? Okay, so don't worry in this case.
Okay.
Okay, so again, yeah, this one. Then long run elasticity of labor demand. It's the same percentage change in employment, percentage change in wage. Yeah, and then you can calculate the long run. So basically, the long run demand curve is more elastic than the short run because firm can basically change the number of its capital and can decide it to be in scale effect and substitution effects. Yeah, it's more flexible. And basically, in the short run, the firm is stuck with a fixed capital stock. And the decision can be made only about the number of employees, that's all. Okay, really quickly, this is the elasticity of substitutions. Please read it at home. Yeah, it's just an example for this. Yeah, what happened. And then, because we do not have time now, yeah, but I really encourage you. Yeah, please just read the Marshall rules of direct demand. And basically in 2 words. Yeah, it's like the labor demand is more elastic than the greater of elasticity of substitution. I hope it's like kind of clear. Then labor demand is more elastic, the greater of elasticity of demand for the output. Hope is clear too. Yeah, because like if we have basically elasticity of substitution, we have elastic demand for the output. Yeah, we have more elastic labor demand. Then labor demand is more elastic, the greater labor share in the total cost. Do you understand why? Why we have labor demand is more elastic, the greater labor share in total cost?
Yes. So you need to encourage your workers more.
Yeah, it's simple, yeah. And then the demand for labor is more elastic, the greater the supply elasticity of other factors in production, such as capital. It's the same logic. Yeah, it's like simple rules, and this is the first one, simple labor market equilibrium. Yeah, it's again is really simple cross. Yeah, when from like that, the basic employment level in the labor market depend what on the wage rate and on the like basically on the demand and supply of the firms and workers. That's all. Okay, we are, and this is some empirical facts for you. Okay, we are done for today. Okay, any questions? If no, sorry for 10 minutes late. Then for some of you, I see you during your basically seminars.
Excuse me, could you please, in several words, clarify the logic of other three statements on that slide about elasticity? So, 42nd one.
Okay, look, for instance.
Here, yeah.
Yeah. Could you see?
Yes, of course.
For instance, this for second one, yeah, I just like I try to write an explanation, but basically, well, labor demand is more elastic, the greater elasticity of demand for the output. It means, for instance, the greater the reduction in consumer demand. So we have more elastic, basically consumer demand for any goods, yeah. The larger the cut in the employment and the more elastic the industrial labor demand curve. Okay, you know that we have different goods, yeah, and the elasticity for the different goods can be different. And it means if we have great elasticity for specific good, okay, can you think about what is the example of the good with the high elasticity, for instance? Could you think about
fruits?
Any? Yeah, for instance, yeah, what else? I mean, it's really simple. Think about food, yeah? What food can be with great elasticity for the price? Okay, that's good. Could you think about any products with a really low elasticity?
Medicine,
for instance, or like basic stuff. Yeah, you need to survive. Yeah, I mean, you need to buy some food, for instance, to survive. And even think about really crisis time. Yeah, people still need to buy some food. And it means, for instance, if your products have great elasticity of demand of output, then the labor demand is more elastic too, because, I mean, the firm is really sensible to consumer demands. Yeah, so, okay, what could you think about any production when the labor demand is not so elastic because of, for instance, we have low elasticity for their products? What think about, for instance, for the food? What food people always need to buy? The basic, for instance.
Let it be, I don't know, maybe
bread.
some porridge.
Yeah, for instance, bread, for instance, yeah. So, I mean, even, so for this, yeah, in this case, yeah, for the production from the produced bread, yeah, what will be with the labor demand? If we say that bread, the price of the bread is not so elastic, as the demand for the bread is not so elastic, what happened with the labor demand? Think about that. Okay, it's an elastic too. Why? Why in case of bread we have
Because
low?
people need to buy bread and they need at least some money to do that.
Yeah, of course. And then firm basically have some people who produce this bread, yes?
Yes.
They need to produce. So the second one is more understandable now.
Yes, it is okay.
Okay. The first one, look. Labor demand is more elastic, the greater the elasticity of substitutions. Yeah, basically, the greater the elasticity of substitutions, it's like it means a more similar labor and capital in the production process. And it means they allow the firm easily substitute labor for capital. And in this case, you remember we have scale substitution effect. This basically example of this Marginal rules of demand explain what effect. If we say that
Substitution.
we have, yeah, substitution, yeah, basically because we have high elasticity of substitutions, when basically we have increasing in the wage rate, then firm may decide it, instead of very expensive labor force, use capital. Yeah, like, so this one is, I hope, understandable too.
Okay. I just think I will need some time to look them on my own and to somehow analyze them one more time. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Just small, sorry for 15 minutes late for the lectures. Look, in the beginning of each lecture slide, basically I wrote the chapters of the textbook. And if you feel that you do not understand nothing, you can basically read the chapter. It doesn't matter whether you're going with the labor economics or modern labor economics, it's approximately the same. So like here,
Okay.
just for you to, okay, any other questions? If no, then for those who have seminar at 30 p.m., I see you in like 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry,
Yeah.
will we have tests the next lecture or not?
Yes, as I told
about
you,
labor supply.
not
Demand.
labor
Sorry.
and maybe like 2 or 1 questions about labor supply too, but basically done with the labor supply.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. The next test will be basically about labor demand, but it can be questions about labor supply too.
Okay, thank you.
As I told you again with the test, as I told you, we're going to have 5 tests. It means that each lections in the beginning we have test. We have tests. That's all.